Good day, everyone. My name is Steve Clermont. I'm the Director of Planning and Deployment here at CTE, the Center for Transportation and the Environment. I'd like to welcome you to our CTE Leadership Circle webinar series. This one is Under the Hood, a candid conversation with zero-emission transit technology suppliers. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping elements. First of all, we will have a audience Q&A session after each one of the presenters have gone through their materials. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. I can't promise that we'll get to all of your questions, but we'll do the best that we can. Secondly, if you'd like to turn on closed captioning, select Show Captions at the bottom of your screen. Finally, the webinar will be recorded and sent out to all registered attendees. Next slide, please. There we go. First of all, CTE is a member-supported nonprofit organization. We do conduct several webinar series. This is our second webinar of a four-part series. Special thanks to our Leadership Circle panelists, which are Mike Finneran, who's the Vice President and General Manager of Proterra Transit. Mike has been at the leading edge of delivering zero-emission public transportation for over 15 years. John Horonchik is the Director of North American Transit Sales for BAE Systems. John has spent over 20 years helping fleets get to zero emissions by successfully commercializing green transportation technologies. Rick Mason is the Vice President of Next Gen Solutions at Plug Power. Rick carries more than 23 years of hydrogen and fuel cell experience and leadership roles at Plug across operations, supply chain, product management, and engineering. Finally, Michael McDonald is the Operations Manager at New Flyer Industries Vehicle Innovation Center, which is a dedicated institution for bus and coach technology. Mike leads discussions with customers and stakeholders on zero-emission technology and transition, technology pipeline benchmarking, project proposals, and oversees New Flyer's North American zero-emission demo program. Next slide. Okay, before we get into our program, I'd briefly like to introduce CTE for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization. CTE is a nationwide nonprofit engineering and planning firm entirely dedicated to transforming the transportation sector to zero emissions. We primarily do this through research, development, demonstration, planning, and deployment projects funded by various federal and state grant-funded programs. Next slide, please. Over the past 10 years, our project focus has been primarily with transit, but we've recently expanded into school buses, municipal fleets, universities, and other medium and heavy-duty fleets operating in the freight and delivery sector, airports, and marine ports. We offer 4 primary service areas: technology development, and an example of this is where we help Proterra build and demonstrate their very first zero-emission transit bus; smart deployment, where we've helped well over 100 transit agencies across the country deploy more than 700 zero-emission buses; fleet transition planning, we've established an industry-leading fleet transition planning methodology, and to date have done over 40 fleet transition plans. And then finally, advocacy. We have a group that works in DC, where we advocate for the transit industry and zero-emission technologies, and have been a major influencer of FTA's LONO program. Next, please. All right, so we're going to get into our program now. That will be followed, once we get through each one of the 4 presentations, we'll follow it with a moderated question session, and then we'll wrap up with audience questions. So first, we'll get into, I'd like to introduce Michael McDonald with New Flyer. Michael?
Hey, wonderful. Thanks so much for that introduction, Stephen. Thanks to CTE for organizing this webinar and inviting us to participate. So as Steve said, I am Mike McDonald, and I lead the New Flyer and MCI Vehicle Innovation Center. So the VIC was established to sort of be this technology expertise hub within the company. So obviously we're finding ourselves existing in a very different era, and we needed a brick and mortar facility to help communicate all the great innovations that we've been working on and sort of lead this evolution that way. So it's all about communication and even doing some innovation of our own there. Next slide, please. Great. So I think most on the line are probably very familiar with New Flyer. We're actually a part of the NFI group, which is this greater group of companies dabbling in various industries, all sort of related to the idea of mass transportation. So you've got New Flyer, the transit bus business, we've got MCI, the motor coach business, and we also have a number of other companies as well. We've been around for a very long time, centuries if you add it all up together. New Flyer itself for over 90 years, with a presence in 2 countries, thousands of employees, and many tens of thousands of vehicles out there. Next slide. So as I was alluding to, everything has really changed so much over the past several years, and we kind of had to, we found ourselves being, turning from a very traditional bus manufacturer into really being this mobility solution ecosystem or mobility solution provider. It's about so much more than the bus. Of course, that is our core business, but it's everything from working with the customer in the early stages to being able to support them in the field and forging that relationship, helping them through things like workforce development, which was something that we never thought we'd have to be involved in. Same with understanding infrastructure, and we established our infrastructure solution business, as well as getting into becoming more data-driven and trying to help integrate our products with the future of smart cities. Next slide. So speaking of the zero-emission technology, so here are our actual products, probably of most interest. Getting to develop a zero-emissions product is the culmination of actually decades of work going back to the 60s with our trolley bus and cutting our teeth on understanding electric drive. And these are our latest and greatest products here today that you see in front of you. So we have our battery electric bus, our Excelsior Charge NG, and just released last fall our fuel cell bus, Excelsior Charge FC. So that's interesting that we actually have several different types of zero-emission vehicles that we offer. And I don't have time to go over all of our latest innovations in great detail, but just to kind of give you a flavor there at the bottom of your screen, a more powerful, more consolidated a next generation propulsion system, the latest and greatest in batteries with improved energy density and improved reliability. We brought the manufacturing of battery boxes and battery enclosures in-house as well, and made that lighter by using a composite material. And for our fuel cell bus, are now able to leverage the latest and greatest technology with a more powerful fuel cell, one that's more inclined for service and one that's purpose-built for transit applications. Next slide. So we have a number of other products as well that are zero or low emission. Of course, I mentioned our trolley electric, which has undergone several different generations. So there, if you have the infrastructure installed, you still get the full benefits of electric drive. So true zero emission by connecting directly to the grid. The hybrid electric vehicle, which I actually kind of think of as a real precursor to our fuel cell vehicle. So you have a full electric drivetrain, and then you've got a diesel engine in the background to manage the energy and range on board. What we've done from that into the fuel cell version is basically taken that diesel engine and replaced it with a zero emission solution. And then the culmination of all this work and combined with some real incredible improvements with automated vehicle technology, we released Excelsior AV, which is a combination of our zero emissions battery electric platform with this new technology to start looking into automation of transit bus activities. Next slide, please. So in addition to our transit bus business, we also have our MCI motor coach business as well. And so what's great about that is we were able to take all of this knowledge and learnings from the development of our battery and fuel cell transit buses and basically take that technology and translate it over to the coach world. So we're able to serve in multiple industries. So we've got 3 different battery electric models of MCI coaches on the market as well. Next slide. Great. So everything off the bus. So again, we have got all this fabulous technology out there. We're collecting, or we're transmitting a ton of data out there. So one of our initiatives internally was to try and find a way to smartly use this data and help provide our customers the ability to be more data driven and actually use that data to help drive and inform decisions there. So we have this NFI Connect system that is actually group wide. So, besides just the transit bus business, we can actually take that and adapt it to various other platforms. So this is the collection of all of that data from all those various subsystems, and the idea behind that being to filter it down and turn it into something that's useful for leadership and for folks working day to day to drive decision making. And we've also established our own infrastructure solutions business as well. So that's everything, again, off the bus. It's far more different than simply procuring diesel nowadays. So the idea of procuring chargers, building out infrastructure, and designing the whole thing, since it's all custom built for each agency because everybody's different, we're here to help with that. Next slide. Workforce development's obviously very important as well. The colleges have done a wonderful job in trying to catch up with us in innovating for zero emission vehicles, but there's still plenty of work that we are doing inside. So, for folks in the leadership types of positions, we have the Vehicle Innovation Center that I run to help educate and communicate what we're doing. And then for your technicians and the folks who are actually getting to work on this stuff on the day-to-day, we have our New Flyer Institute and MCI Academy to help train up your workforce to work on maintaining zero emission buses. Next slide. And finally, what happens after you bought the bus and after you've had it for a number of years? We're there to support you as well. We have a full comprehensive service program that's North America wide, and both those folks and yourselves have access to our NFI parts business. This is a full comprehensive group wide initiative where parts for all of our vehicles across the group are consolidated, becoming much more available at your fingertips and able to get you much better pricing on that as well. Next slide. So that does it for me. So again, thanks so much to CTE for inviting me here today. Please feel free to take down my contact information and contact me anytime. Very excited for our discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mike Finneran from Proterra. Mike.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the invitation. Excited to be here. I always enjoy talking about zero emission buses. And obviously we've been doing this for quite a long time, Steve, as you mentioned, along with CTE all the way back in 2010, which is when we deployed our first heavy duty zero emission battery electric transit buses. So next slide, please. I'm Mike Finneran. I'm the vice president of our transit business. And if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about what Proterra does. So you can see our vision statement: all electric, no emissions for the earth. We've got 3 business units that you can see there, and they really do work together to form what we think of as the full ecosystem, which is really what's needed to have a successful EV bus deployment. So it starts with our own batteries that we make in-house. As a matter of fact, we just opened up a new battery factory here, not just 10 miles down the road from our bus manufacturing facility in Greenville, South Carolina. If it's not it's awfully close to the largest battery manufacturing facility dedicated to medium and heavy duty applications in particular. So having that under our own roof is really important from a supply chain standpoint, stability standpoint, technology, and the like. So on the powered business, important to note that, of course, while we do build our own transit buses, we also provide our batteries and our drive systems to other transportation related customers, things like shuttles, paratransit, other buses, other heavy duty buses as well. Our transit business really heavily vertically integrated, which is quite beneficial when it comes to developing new technology. All we do is electric vehicles, right? It's the only bus we produce. We aren't converting other buses, or using diesel or CNG. It's just electric. That's all we do. And of course, if you don't have a charging and infrastructure system to go with it, it doesn't do you much good. So we do that as well. And a relatively new addition is our Valence system, which is our fleet monitoring and fleet optimization system that includes charge management, kind of being vertically integrated in all of these areas. Owning so much of the full stack is really beneficial. We are the leaders really when it comes to things like interoperability. Next slide, please. Just some of our deployments. We've been doing this for well over a decade. First, like I said, first deployments of BEBs in 2010. And before that, we actually made a number of fuel cell buses as well. Proud to say that we've got over 1,100 buses delivered. And a lot of our business comes from repeat customers, which is something we're also proud of. Metro Magazine recently came out with their most recent study on quantities of buses delivered, and we've delivered 40% of all battery electric buses deployed in the US, in North America, since 2017. And obviously we were doing it for a long time before then. They just didn't measure it back then. So we're proud of that. And this broad exposure to different climates, very hot, very, very warm, as you can tell from this map, gives us a lot of experience, a lot of opportunity to learn and to improve. Next slide, please. So in that deployment, we've got about 45 million miles of revenue service. We're currently building and shipping our 5th generation buses. We call that our ZX5. Comes in a 35 and a 40-foot variant. It's a ground up design, right? Designed only to be an EV from the beginning, which we believe allows us to really optimize that design for things like safety, range, efficiency, performance overall. So you can see we've got 738 kilowatt hours. That's the most energy available. And that's really enough energy to cover all of the needs for most customers. So that's our product now. And a lot of learnings have gone into that 5th generation product. A lot of, and I'm sure there's folks on this call who have helped contribute to that as you guys have deployed our vehicles and allowed us to continue to learn and adapt. Next slide, please. Key to all of this is the batteries, which we design and build ourselves. They're really the highest performing and safest medium and heavy duty batteries on the market now. We're deploying what amounts to our 5th generation batteries. That's what we're building right now. And those are coming just 10 miles down the road from our battery factory. There's a lot of testing that's gone into these, continues to go into these. They get the whole team of folks whose job is just to beat the heck out of these things in every way imaginable and make sure that the design is robust for life in what's a challenging operating environment with transit buses. And it really kind of validates the design, I think, because so many other folks are interested in the batteries and we're able to put those into so many other applications. It's because of the learnings that we've had and the designs that we've been able to incorporate that were done originally for our transit buses. One of the things that's kind of neat, I think it's neat as a nerd, a technology nerd. There's a group called Monroe, and they have a show called Monroe Live, where they do like very candid technical discussions about things like batteries, for example. They were actually at our facility, the new battery factory in Greer yesterday, filming a show. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. Again, owning our batteries is really critical to making sure we have no supply issues and we're able to deploy the latest technology. Next slide, please. I always like to think of a successful deployment as a 3-legged stool, and you got to have the bus, you got to have the infrastructure and charge management, and you got to have service and support. And so we've created really a class-leading, industry-leading service and support team. One of the things that I think is neat, recently we deployed our latest version of our Proterra diagnostic tool, which includes an integrated knowledge base. And essentially that's like a live access to all of the technical information that we have. And our other customers are developing, like, things that they might learn at one location across the country becomes available to anybody that's using our diagnostic tool. So that's just an example of how we've been able to continue to grow and innovate on the service side as well. Next slide. This just shows, again, the ecosystem. I always say a 3-legged stool, but if you look on the right, I guess there's 5 legs to our 3-legged stool. But all of those things are needed. They all work together. Having all of those as part of our ecosystem is really what allows us to deploy successful battery electric bus fleets. And it really summarizes with the bottom one there. We've just got the most equipped and experienced team in the industry, whether that's upfront planning, modeling, and things like that, or after sales service and support and optimization. So last slide, just a brief summary. We've built our buses from the ground up to be all electric. That has a lot of advantages in terms of performance. We've got the longest range. We've got very flexible fleet scale charging solutions, namely in the form of our 1440 single large charger that can support up to 24 separate charge points. We've been doing it for a long time, gives us a lot of experience and specifically in our batteries in terms of their safety and performance. And then finally, the service team that really can help you make sure you get the most out of your deployment. So that wraps it up for me. The last slide is just my contact information. And I thank you again, CTE, for having me on the panel.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mike. Now we'd like to turn it over to Rick Mason from Plug Power. Rick.
Hi, Steve, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you, CTE, for allowing Plug to present today. I'm a huge fan of hydrogen. I get in trouble a lot with the battery folks, so I apologize in advance. But now that the green hydrogen truck has arrived, we can get started. Next slide. So Plug is broken up into two business units. We have an energy business unit, which I'll talk about first, focusing on green hydrogen deployments, and our applications business unit, which is looking at applications like transit and many other applications to accelerate the adoption of hydrogen and help our customers decarbonize their operations. Next slide. Okay, so we've continued to vertically integrate across the hydrogen ecosystem. So many partners and PPA agreements for renewable electricity. We're committed to green hydrogen development. So we have many products, scalable products across electrolyzers from 1 megawatts to 10 megawatts arrays. And we also have the liquefaction technology to liquefy that and provide low-cost distribution of the hydrogen molecule once we make those green electrons. We've acquired advanced cryo technologies in Houston, Texas, and we have a whole tanker fleet to deliver liquid hydrogen, as well as a new product that many transit customers are taking advantage of, is a mobile refueler that can provide mobile hydrogen refueling at customer sites for up to 1,000 kilograms on board there. We also make our own hydrogen infrastructure and a pretty extensive network that I'll talk about on the next slide for resiliency across our customer base. Next slide. So we're committed to green hydrogen, as I said. So we'll have 500 metric tons per day of capacity by 2025, which will make us the world's largest liquid hydrogen producer. We're not stopping there, though. We're beyond that across North America and US. We'll have 2,000 metric tons per day by 2030. So that's close to 60,000 buses running on hydrogen. And we have to have, our customers run very commercial operations. So we have to have overlapping sources of supply. And today, across our fleet of customers, we've maintained more than 98% availability. And we're really a one-stop shop. So we do the whole contract, no take or pay, make sure that they're not held up on force majeure events. And basically, we can provide delivery from the closest plant nearby and predictable pricing on that hydrogen. Next slide. So I'm part of the applications business unit and looking at all these new applications. I'll talk about them. Next slide. So we have over 1 billion fuel operating hours on fuel cells. First product line that's really helped launch Plug Power is across fork trucks. So we've got more than 60,000 fuel cells operating. Probably every major automotive company in the US is using our fuel cells for their operations, likes of Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot. And those are customers that can't shut down. So think about more than 40% of the grocery items, or every item that you buy, on Amazon is touched by a fuel cell at one point in its delivery network. Now, with all those customers, there's more than 300 hydrogen-enabled sites. The next logical step for us is, a Class 8 yard tractor. There's hydrogen already at those sites, so there's an opportunity for but more than 1,000 trucks to be converted to hydrogen. A big jump for Plug Power is a partnership with Renault, and Renault is the world's largest light commercial vehicle, electric vehicle provider in the world. And they chose Plug Power based on our experience, our cost, our supply chain to build a hydrogen van. So our joint venture, we don't sell engines to Renault. The joint venture is actually producing hydrogen fuel cell vans. And Renault has said more than 50% of their customer fleets, based on range, will end up converting to hydrogen over battery electric. And last but not least, buses. We've got a significant joint venture with SK in South Korea. And with Geely Bus, they're looking to deploy thousands of buses over the next few years. But more importantly, we've got a great partnership and teaming agreement with BAE. And I'll have to disagree with Mike earlier. The largest range bus out there, I think, will be Eldorado, with a gigawatt-hour bus running on hydrogen. So that's part of the partnership with BAE and Eldorado coming out. Next slide. This is an interesting product. So we launched a megawatt scale product for data center backup. And Microsoft earlier this year, when we passed all their data center testing, said it was a moon landing moment for the industry. So targeting that application to start was where we had begun, but more than half of our customer base this year can't get electricity. So we're using this product now for EV charging. And typically a 1 megawatt product can support 100 vans, and there's huge growth in electric demand. So we see this product being a great product to help all our customers decarbonize the industry. Next slide. All right, last one. As I said, we're building over 2,000 tons of daily hydrogen capacity to help support the hydrogen economy. We plan to have over 500,000 fuel cell powered fork trucks by 2030 and 100,000 vans on the road. More than a gigawatt of stationary power products deployed, and 5 gigawatts of electrolyzers being shipped per year. That's it. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Rick. Our next speaker today, panelist, is John Horanchik from BAE. John.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Steve, and thanks to CTE for the opportunity. I'm John Horanchik with BAE Systems, and I'll be taking you under the hood, the components and system hardware we use both in battery electric and fuel cell electric buses. Please go ahead. So at our core, we look at platforms and how we can electrify them, make them more efficient, make them more reliable, make them more operationally redundant. We've been in the market, the transit bus market now for 25 years. Our heritage business expertise came from our commercial and defense avionics business. The component in the top right corner there is a fully automated digital engine control. They sit on the wings of commercial and defense aircraft and also in the tail. And we were a core technology when the aviation industry went from pneumatic and hydraulic controls to fully digital and electric controls. The component in the middle looks somewhat similar, and that's what we do. We design from the circuit board up our power inverters and integrate them into full systems and put them on platforms like military hardware, aircraft, transit buses, Mars rovers, satellites, and whatnot. In the bottom right, you'll see, I'll talk more about what we're doing on the fuel cell bus side. Next, please. So our Gen 3 hardware is our third iteration of our product line that started in the late 90s. So we design, manufacture, test, and support in the aftermarket, both our propulsion inverters and our accessory power inverters, along with an electric motor, and lay software controls over that to bring the most efficient, highly reliable and redundant power management systems for transit. So this hardware, it's just starting to make its way into the marketplace at some of the larger fleets in different applications. And over the last year, we fielded buses with Nova Bus, and we're excited to be working with Eldorado on both their next generation battery electric and fuel cell bus, featuring a 125 kilowatt hour fuel cell, as Rick mentioned earlier, from Plug Power. And then on the far right, I always think this is interesting, you know, with all the low-no funding that goes out and how it gets divvied up across different propulsion types. We're the only powertrain that has fielded low-no funded applications with zero-emission capable hybrid buses. So that's the low side of the pie. And then both fuel cell and battery electric buses. So we're a key player, and we've worked with CT over the years in securing low-no funding for transit agency fleets. Next slide, please. So getting under the hood, I tried to stay with the theme of the webinar title. So like I said, we design a fully integrated powertrain, right? Both propulsion and accessory power system. Our Gen 3 hardware is a next step of technology. We've integrated silicon carbide and GaN technology switching. It's the latest move from silicon-based switches to silicon carbide. Silicon carbide delivers a smaller, more efficient, generates less heat, right? So there's less cooling requirements, switching technology. So it's allowed us to downsize our components. And I'll show another slide where what that means on the vehicle. But more importantly, we designed our new components to get rid of all and any required filtering and junction boxes that you'll see in prior generation systems. So everything is direct connect. So direct connect to the motor, direct connect to the batteries, direct connect from the charging element, and also to our accessory power system. So what that means at the end is less connections, there's less cabling, less harnessing, fewer cables, shorter cables, right? All that means is the removal of weight, and the space is such a commodity on these new buses. We take advantage of all that and take complexity out of the system. Next, please. As we've taken these systems and downsized them, we've removed them off the roof of the buses. If you had a chance to look at the Nova Bus LFSE Plus, all those inverters that were on the roof in our hybrid bus applications are now at ground level. So you now are dealing with high voltage systems on the ground versus on the bus. We've also integrated a high voltage measurement check port. So not only can you check for voltage before you work on our systems at a software diagnostic tool, but you can also check it at the point of service. So this is a secondary safety feature before your technicians start pulling cables. Next, please. Just talk about our diagnostic software. It's the same one we use on our hybrid buses. It's also going to be available for both fuel cell and battery electric. It looks across the whole system, and that's key when you're trying to track down ground faults. Next, please. And then finally, just efficiency. We pride ourselves in trying to squeeze every kilowatt. They're so precious when we talk about battery buses, and making sure kilowatts are going towards range and not being consumed in cables and connections. But we've seen quite a benefit from going to the new technology, the new silicon carbide switching. And I'm going fast because I'm getting the signal here. And then finally, one of the benefits that we designed in our system is modularity. So that allows us to, if a platform requires more accessory power, we can add it. If they're not using batteries, we can take out those slices. If they're using a generator, we can add that slice. So you can see some of the applications we're working on for customers outside of transit. In the middle, we're working on a vertical takeoff electric flying machine. We're actually even providing the energy storage system in that as well. So, we look at this as building in future proof, right, for whatever you need in transit moving forward. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Steve.
Terrific. Thank you, John. And can't wait till we get those electric planes as part of microtransit out there. So we're going to move into our Q&A session. Ask each of our presenters to turn on their screen. But I've got many questions, of course. But we do welcome our audience to submit their questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. So to start out with, Rick, I can't let you just drop a term like a gigawatt hour bus when we're still haven't seen the megawatt hour bus. So can you explain that? Explain yourself, young man. Explain to the audience what a gigawatt hour bus is.
Yeah, so I believe and John Hronzik, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Eldorado bus is coming out with 60 kilograms on board. So at 16, 17 kilowatt hours per kilogram, that's a gigawatt hour of energy. So it's simple as that.
Okay. So Mike.
What he said, yes.
All right, Mike Finneran then. So you're, I mean, Proterra manufactures its own batteries. You're pretty well advanced in battery technology. So tell us your evolution in batteries, where you're at right now, and where are you going? I mean, what can your customers expect in the future, if that's something that we can even discuss here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if we'll quite get to a gigawatt hour, Rick, maybe a megawatt hour, perhaps. But so we're at really what we would consider our 5th generation packs now. And I can tell you, if anybody, some of you may have been there, some of the panelists may have been there at the ACT show. We talked about kind of a sneak peek of our next generation pack. And it isn't necessarily a pack that would go on a transit bus, but it does represent an indication of kind of how quickly things are moving, because it's an order of magnitude lighter, less expensive, higher energy density. So one of the advantages of this business, frankly, and being able to parallel the volume and the advancement from light duty EVs, for example, is every year there's a pretty significant bump in technology, whether that's cost or weight or energy density or whatever attribute you might want. All of those are progressing. And so owning that stuff, owning the stack, allows us to kind of take advantage of that. Doesn't mean we'll always deploy those sorts of things that quickly, but I can tell you that there is a lot of work going on right now on next generation technology, and we continue to look at the data from our field of deployed buses now and really see very positive trends in terms of life of degradation is really looking quite good on batteries.
Yeah, I apologize, Mike. You are correct. I've got too many gigawatts in backlog right now. So yeah, it's a megawatt hour that we'll have on board.
It'll happen eventually, right, Rick? It'll be there.
Exactly.
I don't know, Rick, I just saw those orders flowing in there for being able to go cross country in a single fueling. So very good. Thank you for making that clarification, Rick. So Michael, kind of similar question to you. What are you seeing on the battery front, and as far as how we've progressed and what innovations and what people can expect going forward?
Yeah, I'll echo a little bit of Mike's answer there. Regarding the incremental improvement that you can expect from batteries, whether it's every single year or every couple of years, and we fully expect that that's going to continue as well. And so we're trying to do our best to keep our ear onto the ground of exactly how fast that'll accelerate and try to model it so that we can predict that out. I think that a lot of folks are hoping for some sort of grand battery breakthrough. I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I'm kind of doubtful if that is going to happen that way. I think it's going to continue to be incremental. For solid state batteries, for example, we've been hearing about them for about 10 years. for 10 years, we've been hearing that it's about 2 years away. So that gives you an idea of how difficult it is to make these really big breakthroughs to do something like double or increase energy density by like 50% or anything like that. So, for us, we take advantage of the NMC type chemistry. So the types of work that's being done there, are doing things like increasing the nickel ratio to increase energy density, but also being able to stabilize the electrode, adding stabilizing electrolyte additives for the exact same reason, to try and grant lifetime to that, as well as increase silicon composition as well, all while trying to prevent that trade-off of gaining energy density, but not coming at the detriment of cycle life. Because as you know, in transit, we have to operate for very long periods of time. It's probably one of the heaviest duty cycles that are out there. So we're in a very tough spot to innovate, but I think all of us here accept the challenge.
So, Michael, I'll stay with you for a moment. Since New Flyer offers both hydrogen fuel cell electric buses as well as battery electric buses, how does the transit agency make the decision between those two technologies? What's your guidance there?
Definitely the two biggest drivers there are straight up location. So, there's so many, factors that play into this. And so obviously when you're considering, both battery or, hydrogen, what's the cost of electricity, what's the availability of electricity, and how does that translate to either charging bus fleets or for folks that want to actually produce their own fuel, what sort of, implications are there for, the cost of electrolysis. So that's just one example of something that has to be weighed, again, on the front of producing your own hydrogen, cost and availability of natural gas as well. And then climate swings for that can work against battery electric. That's another good example of it. And then I would say that sometimes it just comes down to, good old subjective preference. A lot of our customers have, done a really good job of doing their homework, and they've arrived at the conclusion of what works for what works best for them. And so for us, it's to follow the customer's lead and be able to provide that. But it's a real mixed bag out there, and it's usually driven by where you are and who's in charge.
All right. Rick, let's assume for the moment that someone agency has selected hydrogen fuel cell. How do they get started with infrastructure? I mean, to date, most agencies have maybe done small pilot projects, and it's certainly easier to do a small battery electric charging installation than a hydrogen fuel cell or hydrogen fueling station installation. But regardless, how does one get started with a fueling station?
Yeah, so again, we have over 300 fueling stations across, our customers that are supporting, anywhere from 500 kilograms a day to tons per day of hydrogen. Another shout out to CTE member Trillium has been a good partner for the transit agency, and they've been in the business a long time. So we support them in providing equipment and infrastructure, and as well as green hydrogen to support their operations. So we're developing different solutions for hydrogen infrastructure, starting with liquid hydrogen and gasifying it to 350 bar or 700 bar, depending on the customer application.
All right. John, one of the biggest things, we're always challenged to put more energy capacity on a bus. So the other side is, it's all about efficiency here. So what is BAE doing to help improve efficiency of battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell buses? And what other hurdles are out there that BAE is responding to?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. As I mentioned, right, we switched from a silicon to a silicon carbide based switching technology. So inside our inverters, right, you'll see that silicon carbide, if you look at like the automotive industry and a lot of the CHIPS Act, the federal funding is really going into establishing silicon carbide manufacturing in the US. And we found that because it's more efficient, it requires less cooling at a system level, right? So that just all means that less energy is being expended on accessories and and just moving kilowatts around versus the prior generation technology. On top of that, again, in an effort to squeeze out efficiency, we've incorporated AC and DC filtering into our modules. So that's now something that doesn't happen externally, it's internal. So again, every time a kilowatt goes through more cabling or another connector, right, there's loss. So we're seeing that at a system level that the technology is now approaching 96, 98%, kilowatts in, kilowatts out. And we did all that with the full system design in mind.
All right, thank you, John.
Yep.
Mike, obviously workforce development is an important element to any deployment project. This technology is going to have a paradigm shift impact on transit agencies. What are your recommendations, or what are the key elements of workforce development, and also recognizing that FDA is making a lot of funding available to assist agencies in this area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's having been involved in this for a long time. It's been kind of neat to see like the natural progression of an industry. First, it was, is the bus going to make it, and then how are we going to charge it, and then you get to the point where it's like, geez, this stuff is there, and now we got to have people to work on it, and operators and stuff. So, the things that, like Michael, that you're doing at the Vehicle Innovation Center are super neat, and I think it's something that what we recommend is a customer interested in this, really just think this through and talk to OEMs, talk to other folks where it's been successful, and put a plan in place from very early on. So we have a lot of resources where we try to help them with that. We want them, for example, to identify champions within their organization so that we can kind of focus training and learning on those smaller group of folks, and then those folks kind of form the kernel of what can be a growing, knowledgeable base of technicians, for example, that are really skilled and confident in the area. The other thing to think about, speaking of the FTA funding, there's boatloads of it, especially with like the Lono, the way that's structured with 5% requirements. I think what we've seen is the openness to be creative, specifically from the FTA. They want the transit agency, to be creative with how you're using that funding. So, for example, you need to buy tools. You can't do training if you don't have the right tools. So buy some tools. You need like scaffolding to work on the roof of the bus. You can't do training without that. So that kind of stuff can be training related. Absolutely. So be creative with that. And then, utilize, the resources that the OEM has, for example, and a growing number of folks. I'll mention one, CTTC, California Transit Training Consortium. They've got classes that are maybe generic, not OEM specific, but those are really important as well. So be creative, I think, is the overriding message on that. Think early on and be creative.
All right. Michael, one of the most important aspects of a battery electric bus deployment, not only deployment, but continued 12 years of operations, is the integration and interoperability with charging equipment that are frequently manufactured by third parties. So what is New Flyer doing to ensure reliability of third-party charging equipment that they may be interfacing with for the next 12 years?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Steve. So there's a number of different examples that I could give. Probably the most prominent being that's kind of what our infrastructure solutions team was designed to do. In addition to actually working with the customers directly on what their charging infrastructure is going to look like, it's also to work with the charger OEMs. And so we've done extensive work in building those partnerships and having the trust to make those kinds of recommendations. There's now probably 1,000,001 charger providers that are out there. We're not going to work with all of them. We want to make sure that we're working with ones that we have a very good business relationship, and therefore it's implied that we're going to be technically aligned as well. So we have a commissioning process with all of them, with all of our buses, to ensure that it goes beyond just meeting a standard. Like it's easy for all of us to come on and say, we meet J1772 or J3105, but as we all know, people are capable of reading the same thing and answering differently on the test. So actually physically being able to prove that alignment and prove that compatibility before we deliver any buses, and certainly before we make any recommendations of those chargers to our customers when we're handling infrastructure is paramount.
All right. We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to get into some of the questions that we're receiving from our audience. Let's see. Let's start out with this one. Real quick, Proterra and New Flyer, we've spoken a little bit about the size of the buses that you offer, 35s, 40s, coaches, 60s. But a lot of our agencies that are on here today operate much smaller fleets, a lot of cutaways or very smaller vehicles. How do we address that challenge of, or where do your customers go for that size of vehicle? Mike Finneran?
Yeah, we just build the 35 and 40-foot heavy-duty transit buses, and then the way we would solve that challenge or that request is by providing our batteries and electrification technology to other OEMs. So we do that, for example, Optimal, Lightning E-Motors, and some others that provide that are selling now electric versions of shuttles and smaller vehicles.
All right. And Michael?
Yeah, and then for us, I didn't have a chance to talk about this during my presentation or anything, but we, as part of that NFI family, we also own a company called Arbach that builds smaller, medium duty buses, as well as low floor cutaways for use in like airport shuttles, paratransit, and a number of these smaller types of operations. So for that medium duty bus, we actually back in 2021 released our first electric version of that. It's the electric Equus. And so we offer that in 30 and 35 foot as well. So better for smaller agencies and smaller customers that are trying to explore that technology. And we have a trajectory to try and electrify all of our vehicles. We built tons of different vehicles of all sizes. And so it really takes a Herculean effort to be able to electrify it all. And we're excited to get there one day.
Rick or John, are we going to see a hydrogen fuel cell on a smaller shuttle style or cutaway vehicle anytime soon?
We have that in Europe today, Steve. So we're looking with our joint venture Hyvia, we make a city bus version of that. And we're looking at ways to bring that to North America.
All right. Rick, let's talk about hydrogen for a moment and hydrogen supply. I guess number one, should we be concerned at all about the availability of hydrogen and how agencies get access to the fuel? And number two, there seems to be about 1 million colors of hydrogen. What do agencies need to know about which color they should be buying?
Yeah, so Plug is committed to green hydrogen. And if you work with Plug, we will ensure availability, contractually of hydrogen. We have that with some of the largest retailers, and we've contractually signed, greater than 97% availability of the equipment, which includes supply of hydrogen. I think through the holiday season, kids wouldn't be getting presents under the tree if it weren't for Plug Power, and we've maintained 99% at times across our fleet. Again, we've dealt with all different kinds of hydrogen. Green is from a renewable source, gray on a reformer. We're choosing to implement green hydrogen for us. So,
all right. John, let's talk a little bit about everyone's favorite words, supply chain. Where are we past that with being able to get propulsion systems to manufacturers, or do you have any concerns about meeting potentially the higher demand for either your electric drive systems for your customers?
I would say the shock and awe, sort of rock and rolling disruptions of maybe 12 to 24 months ago have reduced. So that's a good thing. I think the biggest thing is we're still seeing historic lead times for power electronic components. So it's not like we can get an order and then we need to understand demand well beyond that. So in that respect, that's really the challenge. And then, like you said, as the numbers start to ramp up, it's still a challenge. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But the good news is that we're not getting as many phone calls the day before something was supposed to show up, and push outs for 8 weeks. So it's a little more predictable, but the lead times are still way out there.
And I'll ask a similar question of Michael and Mike. So Michael, how does this shift from internal combustion engines to electrification impact your production? And do we have the capacity in the country to meet the demand for electric vehicles? And are we going to be able to see shorter lead times in the future?
So yeah, we're working in lockstep with the market and the market demand to try and fit all of our production capacity that we currently have and be able to offer builds in zero emission. So basically, you've got a total market that's either staying static or only growing at a really small rate. So it's not about going out there and building new plants just to build electric buses for us. It's about changing the way that we do things at our existing ones, and to be able to match that proportion, that mix, as it gets over that hump and becomes a majority zero emission. So we've taken plenty of steps to try and do that, and that'll be an ongoing process until one day we're not even making diesel anymore, which probably will be sooner than later. Now, in terms of supply chain, simple answer is yes, things are a lot better than they were a year ago. I don't think that we're at 100% yet, but I do feel like everyone is sleeping a little bit better at night. I never envied anybody who was working in sourcing, that's for sure. But one final comment on that this was a global phenomenon, and even if we were making 100% diesel and weren't doing zero emission buses, we'd still have the exact same problems with supply chain, because it was everywhere, and it still kind of is.
All right. And Mike, how is Proterra responding to this?
Yeah, I mentioned that we've produced 40% of all the battery electric buses since 2017, and actually more if you go back further. And that 40% is actually true for last year as well. We produced 40% of all the battery electric buses delivered last year. So we continue to scale. Right? We've got a lot of demand. Right now, supply chain is not a challenge for us, I'd say, by and large anyway. Certainly on the main components that we control ourselves, we've got that supply chain under control. So we're continuing just to add production and scale.
Great. And with that concludes our webinar today. I'd like to thank Mike Finneran from Proterra, Michael McDonald from New Flyer, Rick Mason from Plug Power, and John Harancic from BAE for their presentations and their responses today. I'd also like to thank our audience for taking an hour of the day to join us on this webinar. We will be sending out a transcript of this. You'll have all the information for Proterra, New Flyer, BA, and Plug Power. If you have any follow-up questions, please direct them to these gentlemen. And again, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.